Hello, welcome to Writing Quest. In today's episode, we are going to discuss writing the darkest moment of your story. Huzzah! Alright, so in today's episode, we are going to discuss the darkest moment. And the darkest moment comes right after the disaster, where the biggest problem in your story has occurred. And so this is where we find our hero at their lowest point. And so we're going to talk about 5 different tips on how to write that and really make this part of the story land. Number 1. Everyone is devastated and someone is to blame. So this is basically where the disaster is a moment that everyone feels. It happens to everyone. It's where the most amount of chaos happens. It happens to all the characters, even the unnamed ones. So it's not just the darkest moment for your character, but it is the darkest moment for everyone, which then compounds to make it even worse for your main character. Because your main character is, if you do the disaster correctly, then it will feel like all of the weight is resting on their shoulders. And so the darkest moment is felt by everyone and someone is to blame. What does that mean? That means that, the hero is probably going to blame themselves. The supporting characters might find someone else to blame, tell the hero they're not the ones to blame for what has happened. But everyone feels like someone is to blame and nobody really knows who it is. So, and this first tip of this, it's very important that everyone feels very confused and at their lowest point of the story. And number 2, the main character feels like everything is their fault. And this kind of comes out of number 1, that the main character they blame themselves. So when they're looking for someone to blame, they don't necessarily blame other people. They blame themselves, or at least in part. They may not totally blame themselves, but it's kind of like an unknown deep down thing. They do blame themselves for everything that has happened. This really compounds on the fact of everything that gets revealed during the disaster. So if there's any story points or personal revelations or someone dies or whatever happens, really informs how the character feels about this. And so there may be someone to blame externally, like the enemy or this or that, but internally, the main character needs to feel like, I should have done more, I could have done more, or I didn't do this or that, or whatever it may be, but they're really feeling that internally. And if you can wrap that all up with their internal conflict as well, it's going to hit even harder. Which leads to number 3. This defeat is personal and it's completely wrapped up with the main character's internal conflict. So as I said at the end of the second one, if you can wrap this disaster up and the darkest moment with your main character's internal conflict, that's where the real story is going to be, because they're going to be blaming themselves. They may be lashing out at people around them. But the disaster into the darkest moment is their internal conflict realized. It's the most pivotal moment for them, where they're going to feel like everything they have done up to this point is in shambles, and everything that there's nothing else to do. Everything that they have done didn't work, and so nothing that they're going to do is going to work. Which leads to number 4, there's no more plans. Up until this point, with all the different plot points and all the different parts of the story in Acts 1 and 2, they felt like at least there was a way forward. They would make a plan, they would execute plan would fail, they'd make another plan. They would just keep in that cycle of trying to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work. At this point, they just give up. There's no more plan. There's nothing for them to do. They've used up all of their plans, and they're essentially just stuck. They're just wallowing in their self-pity of having failed, and there's nothing left to do except accept the defeat that they have brought upon themselves. And so at this point, your main character is not going to have a clear path forward. There's going to be no true, this is what I need to do next. And finally, number 5, all hope is lost. This, again, ties up with there being no more plans. Not only does your main character need to feel it, but your side characters and anyone that's involved in your story, except for maybe the person that's going to help bring them out of it, needs to feel like there's no more plans. There's no more hope for us. The enemy has won. They feel like this is the end of the story. Similar to, it's kind of a mirror of the supposed victory. The supposed victory is where right before the disaster, where the hero feels like they won. They ended the story, they beat the bad guy, and the story is over. This is the opposite of that, where they think the story is over, but it's because they've been defeated. And so in a way, they kind of mirror themselves, and those two story beats mirror themselves. And so there's no hope for your characters, and they feel like they have been completely defeated. And so now they need to decide what to do going forward. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Writing Quest. Thank you for subscribing if you have done that. If you haven't done that, please do. Like, comment, and share. We love to talk here on this channel. We love to talk in the comments. So join that conversation and let me know about your stories that you're writing. And we will see you next time on Writing Quest. Huzzah!